Not sure if your toddler is playing enough or feeling like you are stuck on the stacking cups and wondering if there is more out there in the world of toddler play? Today's video is just for you. We are diving into 9 different types of play that your toddler could be engaging in, and each of them is super supportive of their early childhood development. Hey, if we haven't met before, my name is Holly. I am a pediatric occupational therapist, a mum, and the founder of Playful Pod, which is my play and child development membership community. I believe that as parents, we can bake into our children a daily life that supports every single area of their development, and we can do that in a way that is simple, slow, and supportive of a good family life. So if you are interested in any of that, make sure to hit subscribe and you will be getting a video from me every single Tuesday all about raising toddlers. Alright, so the first type of play that we are going to be talking about is building, and this is probably the first one that comes to most people's minds. This is those stacking cups, building with magnet tiles, building with soft blocks, building with hard blocks, wooden blocks, different types of blocks. And I wanted to let you know before we really get into each of these and what they'll look like for different ages, that I have a full guide on each of these different types of play and my favorite picks for toys in each of these areas of child development. And in that guide, we go through what's good for 1-year-olds, what's good for 2-year-olds, what's good for 3-year-olds. So if you want to check that out, it is linked in the description box down below, and it will really give you a great guide for understanding what serves each area of child development and each age group. So I'm actually going to just pull that up now and tell you some of the ideas or toys that would work for building. Big beads for 1-year-olds, soft blocks, wooden blocks, Duplo, and a nice base plate for Duplo as well. Joining tubes, stacking cups. For 2-year-olds, we can move on to things like my favorite toy, which is squigs. These are amazing and super versatile in terms of play. Magnet tiles, a wooden rainbow, flat blocks, bristle blocks. When we get to around 3, we can start moving on to some of that smaller Lego. A marble run is great for this age group. Building pebbles, rock blocks are all fantastic. So often this type of toy is something that is open-ended, and we often have quite a large quantity of these toys. Like for example, Duplo, you're not just going to have 3 pieces of Duplo. Often you have like a set which has quite a few pieces. So these are great things to keep in a toy shelf that your child can just come and interact with on the go. I find specifically with building toys, it's really great to rotate them. And because we do often have these like big quantities of them, and we want that they don't get stale. So keep a section of your shelf or toy room or however you store toys available for these type of building toys, and then you can kind of just pull out, this week it's magnet tiles, next week it will be Lego, next week it'll be bristle blocks, and rotate them in that way. With building as well, it can be something that is completely open-ended, but sometimes children also benefit from having some kind of a diagram or having you build alongside them so that they're learning new techniques within the building. The next one is pretend play. Now this is a personal favorite for me. I know that it's not a personal favorite for many parents. Many parents don't love to have to be involved in pretend play, but the good news is that pretend play often lends itself really well to social play as well. So when friends come over, this is one of our favorite things to do, is just to pull out the dress up box and let them rummage through and have fun dressing up and playing in that way. Now, one of the mistakes I see parents making is that they get too much dress up stuff. You don't necessarily need a whole rack of mermaid costumes and princess dresses. Sometimes the simplest dress up stuff, like having silk scarves, are the best because it allows for that open-endedness, it allows for a lot of creative thought, and it allows for the one object, one thing in your house, the one silk scarf, to be used in many different ways instead of needing to have all of the different costumes. Pretend play also comes down to different types of kits. Like for example, we love our doctor's kit. A tea set can also be a great addition to pretend play. A walkie-talkie has also been something that my children have loved. Face paint can be added to pretend playtime. A cash register or a play kitchen with some of that cutting fruit is also an amazing way to be inviting our children into pretend play. While children learn so much just through interacting with the materials that are around them, we may also want to have specific toys or an area or shelf that is really dedicated to cognitive or learning type of play. Now this could be for 1-year-olds, it could could be matching games, it could be musical toys, it could be shape sorting or color sorting. We might also want to start introducing puzzles. So as our children age, by the time they're ending their 3rd year, we're getting towards like a 9-piece puzzle. And once they're 3 to 4, we're obviously extending that as well. I also love for 2-year-olds family board games. So simple ones that aren't as complicated in terms of the amount of rules that they have. I really love the monkey tree game, but simple card games, or there's a Yeti in my spaghetti. All of these are also great additions for cognitive type of play for young children. You may also want to have some learning materials in here. Like, let's think about those traditional Montessori sandpaper numbers or traditional counting beads. These kind of learning materials are great to have available for our children. You may want to use them in a time that is a structured time where you are maybe present with your child, where you're calling it learning time. They may be having that at preschool, so you don't need to have it at home, depending on how your family works. Or it may be that you want to have these on a shelf, like a traditional Montessori setup. Next area is sensory play and loose parts. Now, even for young children that are mouthing things a lot, so before 2, we can still be setting out some kinds of sensory invitations. This may be something that you're wanting to do in a specific time so that you have, eyes on deck in case there's a lot of spillage and mess. It may be something that you do more when you're outside. The beach, for example, is the best sensory table you can get. But even for young children, we can start to be introducing them to sensory play, whether it's a water table or even having pon-pons that they can squish into a kind of box that is giving them that sensory exposure. As our children get older, we can really extend the range of things that we offer. So we can start thinking about things like kinetic sand, rainbow rice, bicarbonate of soda and vinegar, corn flour, as well as more interesting loose parts that they could maybe be sticking into Play-Doh, or that they could be designing different images from. And that could be with buttons, that could be with those wooden discs. Even pasta, as well as pasta shapes, are great for making for loose part play. And once we are really confident that they're not going to be putting things into their mouths, we can really extend that into like colorful stones, glass beads. And within sensory play, it's great to also have some like droppers and different types of scoops, so that our children can be interacting with their sensory materials in this way. Many parents tell me that in their homes they have almost like an overflow of soft toys or stuffies. Now, these dolls and stuffies can be fantastic for play. It doesn't mean that you necessarily need to have so many of them, or that this is the only way that children can play with dolls. When we think about doll play, we want to extend that out to small world play, to figurines, and then as well as dolls and all of the accessories that come with dolls, whether that's a stroller or a little bed or a bottle or a pacifier or a blanket. And in this area, we can also think about puppets, finger puppets, hand puppets, puppets that you make with your child. You can also think about what could go well into a small world. A small world is basically like a play set up that looks like a little miniature world. So often we think about that in terms of like a farmyard or a barn with some animals, or maybe a pretend little fairy garden or something like that. So these figurine dolls are perfect for this. I find generally when children are reaching around like midway between 2 and 3, they start to enjoy these figurines a lot more. And of course, there's a big overlap here with sensory play, because often we are putting the figurines inside a sensory bin, and then our children are extending that into some form of pretend play where the dolls are communicating and interacting and acting out some kind of a world or experience. I would also put cars into this catchment of dolls and figurines. And if your children are anything like my boy, wow, they love cars. We definitely have a big portion of our playtime dedicated to cars. And again, this is a type of play that can really be kind of spread out. So it's not necessarily just pulling one car along the floor. It could be something like having some planks of wood that your child can race the car over and that they fly into something. It could be matching cars according to their size or type or color. Interacting with art materials is also something really fantastic for our children, and it is definitely a type of play because we want our children to be experiencing the process of that art and not necessarily just what they make at the end of it. So for younger children that are still putting their hands in their mouth a lot, we can think about things like taste safe finger paint. We can think about painting with water. Chalk drawing on the pavement is a great one. Doodle boards, sketchboards, whiteboards. And then as our children get older, really extending that into, really painting and being creative with poster paints, whether that is painting leaves and then stamping them, or doing paper mache and then painting the thing that they've made. This type of art play is definitely beneficial for all age groups. Depending on your child's age and stage and also their personality and temperament, you may want to have this out so that your child can freely interact with it whenever they want. For our family, we are not quite there yet. We still have some drawing on the walls that occurs. So this is definitely something that I have some elements of drawing available for whenever my children want, but the paints and stuff is something that we sit down to do together. Another type of play that is just traditionally undervalued is gross motor and movement play. You can think about this in terms of going to the playground or the park. You can think about this in terms of rough and tumble play, in terms of risky play, in terms of learning to ride a bike. There's just so much that young children need to experience in terms of movement play. So movement play for us, we have this as a chunk of time in our day where we know no matter what the weather is like, that there's going to be some kind of movement happening. It could be something indoors if necessary, like an obstacle course or swings, or different movement-based rough and tumble games. Or it could be going outdoors, going to the park or going to the beach or going somewhere that our children are interacting and playing as they move. And yes, in case you're like, does walking count as a form of play? It can. I mean, if you think about walking with a child, often they, walk 2 steps, stop and explore and, smell the flowers and all of that. So this is definitely an amazing way that our children are interacting with the world and learning. Social play is another one that is really important for young children. Now, it's not necessarily going to look the same for a 5-year-old as it is for a 1-year-old. So it's totally okay if you don't feel like your toddler is yet really like diving in and following rules. That's completely developmentally appropriate. But we do want to be giving them opportunities to be around other children. For young children, one of the best ways to do this is in outdoor environments where the play is movement-based play. So that can be following each other, that can be kicking a ball to each other or chasing each other. Another great way to invite social play is through dress up. I find children really, really love this. And it gets some just great kind of interactions and back and forth between children as they are dressing up and playing. The last type of play that I think we often forget is also called play is practical life. Now, you may have heard of this in Montessori. It is basically the tasks of independence that our children do throughout the day. And this is definitely considered play. As our children are helping us to wash a cucumber, they are interacting with it in a really playful way. Now, I'm obviously not saying we need to like put our children to work, but allowing them the freedom and the opportunity to be independent and to do these things by themselves is definitely a form of play as well. There are also many different types of tools that we can use that are helpful in inviting our children into practical life type of play. So that might be something like a learning tower. It might be using sandwich cutters or specialized knives that are child safe. Or it might be having dress-up boards available for your children to play with. But inviting our children into play that is practical and gives them that sense of autonomy and independence is really, really powerful. So I hope you've gotten some great ideas to move past stacking cups and to start thinking about your whole day as an opportunity for your child to be playing. One of the areas of play that we didn't really dive into too much today is risky play. And it is actually so important for young children. So if you're interested in that, you can see the video that's on your screen now. I will see you over there.